What if the band name that symbolized unity became a curse? 6 weeks at the top of the charts. MTV domination, global superstardom. Then their frontman was fired mid-recording session, pushed out for refusing to abandon the blues that built them. Decades of legal warfare followed. A man legally separated from his own name. Success didn't save them. It magnified every crack until the brotherhood shattered. This is the rise and fall of the Geils Band. Boston, 1967. While San Francisco was drowning in psychedelic haze and Los Angeles was chasing the manufactured dreams of the Sunset Strip, Boston's music scene was built on something grittier. Blues, soul, and the kind of work ethic that came from technical university dropouts who'd rather play music than design circuit boards. Jerome Geils, friends called him Jay, arrived in Massachusetts not as a rock star, but as a mechanical engineering student at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. His father was a Bell Labs executive and a devoted jazz aficionado who'd taken young Jerome to see Louis Armstrong at age 10 and Miles Davis at 13. That upbringing gave Geils a disciplined, jazz-minded approach to guitar that would later set his band apart from the sprawling, distorted solos dominating the psychedelic era. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. At WPI, Geils formed an acoustic blues trio with 2 other students who would remain with him for nearly 5 decades. Bassist Danny Klein, studying chemical engineering, and a harmonica virtuoso named Richard Salwitz. The 3 of them saw Muddy Waters perform in New York City, and that single night changed everything. They abandoned their technical caps and followed the pull of the blues. By 1967, they had moved to Boston and rebranded as the Geils Blues Band. They were good, really good, but they lacked the one thing every great band needs, a focal point. That changed when they crossed paths with the Hallucinations, a flashy high-energy soul group fronted by Peter Wolf. Wolf, born in the Bronx, was the quintessential street-smart artist. He'd attended the Boston Museum of Fine Arts School, where he famously roomed with future filmmaker David Lynch. Though Lynch eventually asked Wolf to leave because his lifestyle was too weird even for Lynch's standards. Wolf was already a local celebrity, not just as a singer, but as a fast-talking, jive-spouting DJ on the pioneering FM station WBCN. He brought with him drummer Stephen Joe Blad, a fellow doo-wop and soul enthusiast. The final piece fell into place in 1968 with Seth Justman, a classically trained keyboardist and songwriter from Atlantic City, who'd been studying at Boston University. Justman had spent his youth watching everyone, from Smokey Robinson to the Rolling Stones, perform at the Steel Pier, and he shared the band's obsessive love for obscure R&B. The newly solidified sextet quickly earned a reputation as the hardest working band in rock and roll. They became fixtures at the Boston Tea Party, an iconic venue that served as the epicenter of New England's rock, R&B, and blues scene. While their contemporaries were stretching songs into 20-minute jams and writing lyrics about cosmic consciousness, the Geils Band was perfecting the art of the 3-minute rhythm and blues explosion. They gave everything to their audience night after night, building something real, one sweaty club at a time. The brotherhood was genuine, the chemistry was undeniable, and for a brief, perfect moment, that was enough. In 1970, Atlantic Records came calling. It was the perfect home for a band rooted in soul, and their self-titled debut album dropped later that year. Produced in a whirlwind 18-hour session at A&R Studios in New York, the record was raw, unfiltered, a capture of their stage energy featuring high-powered covers like The Contours, First I Look at the Purse. But almost immediately they encountered what would become their greatest obstacle, the Geils curse. They were a kinetic, visual, and sonic force on stage that seemed to dissipate once the recording light came on. Their second album, The Morning After, yielded their first top 40 hit, a cover of Looking for a Love that peaked at number 39. It demonstrated their ability to turbocharge obscure soul into demolition-style rock that made audiences want to dance. But if the studio was a struggle, the stage was a sanctuary. In 1972, they released Live Full House, recorded at the Cinderella Ballroom in Detroit. Detroit had become a second home for the band. Audiences in the Motor City responded to their blue-collar work ethic and amped up R&B like nowhere else. Promoter Willie Wilson noted that witnessing a Geils show in the 70s was like watching a sweaty mass of energy that wouldn't stop until both the band and the fans dropped. The album showcased the group's instrumental prowess, particularly the interplay between Jay Geils' stinging guitar and Richard Salwitz's revolutionary harmonica work. Salwitz's signature piece, Whammer Jammer, became a masterclass in the instrument. Many considered him the greatest white harmonica player of all time. This live success set the stage for 1973's Bloodshot, their first top 10 album, featuring the funk-inflected Give It To Me pressed on red vinyl. Then came 1974's Nightmares and Other Tales from the Vinyl Jungle, which featured the quintessential Geils anthem, Must Have Got Lost. The single version reached number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1975. But for the dedicated fan, the definitive version appears on the 1976 live double album Blow Your Face Out. The track is preceded by Peter Wolf's Reputa the Buta monologue, a manic, rhythmic, 6-minute performance that would become a cornerstone of their live legacy. Wolf assumes the character of a desperate man sitting by a silent telephone, playing bingo alone, watching late-night TV, eventually pounding on the door of a woman he calls Rapunzel. He implores her to let down her hair so he can climb up the ladder of her love. The emotional tone is a masterclass in controlled desperation. Wolf frames the song as sad, a story for those who are desperate. This theatrical storytelling builds communal tension that explodes when the band finally kicks into the high-energy performance. This wasn't just a song. It was a relatable liturgy of heartbreak and the funny insanity that often accompanies it. The band was succeeding, but subtle compromises were already beginning, and with every compromise came tension. By the late 70s, the music industry was undergoing a seismic shift. Punk and new wave were emerging, and traditional blues rock was starting to feel dated. In 1978, the band made a pivotal move, signing with EMI America. This transition was spearheaded by Seth Justman, who began taking a more dominant role in shaping the band's sonic direction. Justman recognized that for the band to survive the new decade, they needed to temper their driving rock with a sleeker, more radio-ready pop sensibility. The first fruits were 1978's Sanctuary, which went gold and produced the hit One Last Kiss. This evolution continued with 1980's Love Stinks, an album that perfectly captured the burgeoning cynical sentiment of the era. The title track was a departure from their traditional blues narratives, humorous, slightly mean-spirited, and highly infectious. Accompanied by a quirky music video that thrived in the early MTV landscape, the song peaked at number 38. The band was no longer just a bar band. They were becoming a pop techno force, a shift that delighted Justman but began to irk Wolf. Then came late 1981, and the release of Freeze Frame. This album was a calculated, brilliant fusion of the band's high-energy rock foundations and the high-gloss production values of the 80s. Seth Justman, as the primary architect of this sound, crafted catchy, synth-heavy rockers tailor-made for radio and MTV. The lead single, Centerfold, was a cultural juggernaut. With its infectious keyboard hook and that unforgettable refrain, the song spent 6 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The success was international, their first major hit in the United Kingdom, where it reached number 3. The music video, featuring the band performing in a classroom full of girls in nightgowns, was an MTV staple, cementing Peter Wolf's status as a visual icon of the era. The song told a relatable story of a man discovering his childhood crush in the pages of a magazine. Jerome Geils himself later recalled receiving an autographed centerfold from a girl named Angel, who claimed the song was her favorite. The title track, Freeze Frame, followed closely, peaking at number 4 in early 1982. During 1982, the band was selling out arenas across America and the globe. In March of that year, they toured with a young upcoming Irish band called U2, serving as their opening act. For U2, the March 30th show in San Francisco would be their last ever gig as a support act for another band. The Geils Band was at the peak of the mountain, a position that brought with it unprecedented wealth and freeze-frame euphoria. They had won. They had everything they'd ever worked for. 6 guys from Boston who'd paid their dues in sweaty clubs were now global superstars. But winning, as they were about to discover, wasn't the happy ending they had imagined. In the world of rock and roll, the greatest threat to a band's survival is often its own success. As the Geils Band ascended to the top of the pop charts, the internal dynamics, previously built on chemistry and loyalty, began to disintegrate. The success of Freeze Frame emboldened Seth Justman to take full control of the band's creative direction, moving further toward a pop techno sound that increasingly sidelined Peter Wolf's blues rock sensibilities. Relationships within the band became volatile. Wolf, who had been the band's microphone stand pole vaulting visual centerpiece for 17 years, found himself at odds with his primary songwriting partner. Wolf later explained that he did not leave the band voluntarily. The majority of the members wanted to move in another direction. Justman preferred to write material with his brother Paul rather than with Wolf. The creative partnership that had produced their greatest hits was fracturing. The final warning signs were visible during their 1982 European tour opening for the Rolling Stones. While the Stones and Geils Band had deep mutual respect, Geils was friends with Keith Richards and Wolf with Mick Jagger. The tour was high energy and high stress. One night after a show, pandemonium broke out when Wolf went missing. Because Wolf couldn't swim, his bandmates feared he'd been carried away by a riptide. In reality, he'd been partying in a hotel room and had passed out on a closet floor wearing a Moroccan cloak given to him by Keith Richards. Keith's son, Marlon, had closed the closet door without realizing Wolf was inside. While Wolf recalled the incident as funny in retrospect, it underscored the chaotic and increasingly detached nature of the band members' lives during their commercial peak. The end came abruptly in the middle of a 1983 recording session for the follow-up to Freeze Frame. Wolf had brought in material he'd written with outside collaborators, including R&B legend Don Covey and Boston funk wizard Michael Johnson. Justman and the rest of the band refused to record the songs. The rejection was the final straw. Wolf, the mouthpiece of the band, walked out. Think about that for a moment. They'd just had the #1 song in America. They were selling out arenas worldwide. They'd made U2 open for them. And in the middle of recording their follow-up album, they fired their frontman, the voice and visual identity of everything they'd built, because he wanted to stay true to the blues rock sound that had made them legends. Wolf's departure was a shock to the industry and the fans. He immediately began work on his solo debut, Lights Out. Released in 1984, the album featured several tracks the band had rejected, including the title track with backing vocals from Mick Jagger. The album was a critical and commercial success, confirming Wolf's viability as a solo artist. The remaining members, Jay Geils, Richard Salwitz, Danny Klein, and Stephen Joe Blad, chose to forge ahead with Seth Justman, taking over lead vocal duties. They released their 11th and final studio album, You're Getting Even While I'm Getting Odd, in late 1984. The album was a handmade production with an array of high-end 80s studio gear, but the punch and live feeling that had defined the band for over a decade was gone. The album sold poorly, peaking at number 80 on the Billboard chart. The single Concealed Weapons stalled at number 85, a far cry from the #1 success of Centerfold just 3 years earlier. The shift into heavy pop techno sound alienated their core audience and failed to capture a new one. The band officially broke up in 1985. They didn't break up because they failed. They broke up because they succeeded, and success magnified every unresolved tension, every creative difference, every ego that had been held in check during the years of struggle. Following the split, the members took wildly different paths. Peter Wolf, though successful initially, eventually retreated from the spotlight, finding solace in painting, the art he'd studied before his music career took off. He stopped performing on stage for 10 years, a hiatus that only ended when Bruce Springsteen encouraged him to return at the Boston Garden. Jay Geils took a break from music to focus on his other passions, auto racing and restoration. He eventually returned to the blues in 1993, reuniting with Richard Salwitz to form a band called Bluestime. Bassist Danny Klein pursued a chef's career, becoming an expert cook for 6 years before returning to music. Drummer Stephen Joe Blad virtually disappeared from public view, having no interest in the whirlwind of the music industry after the band's demise. But the most bitter chapter was yet to come. In 2012, the remaining members, Wolf, Salwitz, Klein, and Justman, planned a tour without Jerome Geils. Geils filed a lawsuit claiming ownership of the Geils Band trademark, asserting his former bandmates were seeking to misappropriate and steal his name. The legal battle was complicated by a 1982 shareholder agreement signed at the height of their fame, which allegedly restricted individual members from using the band's name for commercial purposes individually. The suit was finally settled in 2015. Geils was allowed to perform under his own name, while the others were free to perform as the Geils Band without Jerome Geils. Jerome Geils quit the group permanently after the suit, expressing that he was tired of playing high-energy rock and roll as he approached his 70th birthday. Jerome Geils passed away on April 11, 2017, at the age of 71. In his final interview, he spoke of his pride in the band's legacy, particularly their evolution from a Chicago-style blues band to a bluesy rock band with 2 top 10 singles. He held no bitterness toward his former bandmates, though the years of acrimony had clearly left their mark. The Geils Band's legacy is often reduced to the hits Centerfold and Love Stinks, but their impact on rock music was far more profound. They proved that a bar band from a regional scene could conquer the world without losing its gritty soul, at least for a while. For many fans and critics, the Geils Band is one of the most egregious snubs in the history of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Despite being nominated 5 times, they've never been inducted. The debate often centers on the Hall's criteria, with some suggesting the band is lumped in with 80s pop acts and not given credit for their decade of hard work in the 70s. Some argue that Richard Salwitz should be in the Hall for his harmonica skills alone, or that the band should be considered the official bar band of rock history. Others point to Peter Wolf as one of the top 5 frontmen of all time, on par with Mick Jagger or Freddie Mercury. What remains today is a catalog of music that chronicles the complexities of romance with a wink and a driving beat. From the youthful optimism of Looking for a Love to the cynical bite of Love Stinks and the voyeuristic nostalgia of Centerfold, they captured something essential about American life. They were the ultimate party band, a blue-collar machine that tore it up in Boston and blew the faces off audiences in Detroit and beyond. While internal power struggles and creative control battles eventually silenced the machine, the echoes of the Woofa Goofa and the scream of Richard Salwitz's harmonica continue to haunt the corridors of rock history. The Geils Band proved that the greatest harmonies can emerge from the deepest discord. Their music united a generation, but success divided the men who created it. They didn't fall because they failed. They fell because winning magnified everything that was already broken. Yet decades later, the songs remain, blasting from classic rock radio, triggering memories of youth and freedom. What's your Geils memory? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from rock's golden era.